Even now, with everything that's going on, Republicans continue to cling to their climate denialism. Let's talk about it in today's video. Hi, I'm Mike Greiner. I'm a lifelong Democratic activist who's concerned about the direction our country is taking. I'm also a lawyer and an academic, and I'm here to help you stand up to the BS of the MAGA crowd. So the big claim we used to hear all the time from the right is that, oh, the climate isn't changing, we don't need to worry about it. Now, most people on the right have kind of given up on that argument. Instead, their argument is, oh, it's happening, but there's nothing we can do about it, really. So we may as well just not worry about it. That's the kind of argument that Larry Kudlow made on Fox News when he talked about how the Republicans need to take the House so they can take the handcuffs off of oil. If ever there were a bunch of BS, that's it. Let's check out the video here.
As Joe Biden's administration wages a war on oil, which is exactly what it is, more than 100 everyday household items.
Okay, let's just be clear about something. Again, there are thousands of leases that are available that are not being used to produce oil right now. So what's this war that Joe Biden is engaging on against oil? Makes for a good sounding headline, but it's just not reality. Let's keep watching.
Are being impacted. You know, things like soap, glasses, and trash bags. Let's bring in the host of Kudlow on Fox Business and our friend Larry Kudlow. Larry, a lot of people don't realize how much petroleum is used in everyday items as well.
Yeah, I mean,
Now, this is actually true. This is a point I make with my students right now, which is that petroleum is everywhere, and we don't even realize the full extent of its integration into our society. But that doesn't mean that we just have to continue down that road. Let's keep watching.
that's one of the many reasons why fossil fuels are so important and why the war against fossil fuels is such a bad idea. Pete, just a quick list, but look at clothes, toothpaste, asphalt, trash bags, computer laptops. Hang on, I'm just getting going here. Fossil fuels are used in MR.
Now, to be clear, though, these things use a very small percentage of the total consumption of fossil fuels out there. They're dwarfed by the amount that is spent in a couple of sectors, one of which, of course, is transportation, another of which is electrical generation, and the third of which is agriculture, interestingly enough. Let's keep watching.
MRIs, pacemakers, IV bags, surgical instruments. Wait, there's more: stethoscopes, prosthetics, hearing aids, glasses.
The reason that he can claim all these things have oil in their production process is because plastic is made from oil generally. But that's not to say that many of these things have to be made with plastics. There are other substances that can be used to make many of these things. So just because there are certain things that happen to be made with petrochemicals doesn't mean that they have to be made with petrochemicals. Let's keep watching.
And for you, Pete, knowing you're a superior athlete from your college days, I won't say where, tennis rackets, golf balls, golf clubs, tents, tires, backpacks, ballpoint pens. You see where I'm going on this? I mean, the first thing I think that the Republican Congress should do when the cavalry comes and they take power January 3rd, and I think they're going to go there, is they're going to take the handcuffs off of the war against fossil fuels. They will.
Okay, now let's talk about that here. This is what I wanted to address. Is we just heard the other day about how Shell Oil got a profit of $9.45 billion. That was actually a drop from what it had the quarter before. But in one quarter, they made almost $10 billion in profit. That's profit, not total revenues. So what are they going to do with that profit? Or are they going to use it to try to develop more sources of oil so that they're able to fill the needs of people, as Larry Kudlow seems to imply? No, what they're going to do is they're going to increase their dividend by 15%, basically a giveaway to the shareholders, and they're going to purchase $4 billion in shares. $4 billion in shares. That means almost half of their profit is going to be spent to buy back shares, which is just a way for them to, on a tax-free basis, increase the wealth of their shareholders. So why is this happening? It's happening because the economics don't encourage oil production. It's not that Joe Biden or anybody else is standing in the way of oil production. It has to do with the fact that the oil producers lost their shirts in 2020. And so they're gun shy about investing in new sources of energy. They know as well as anybody that with the cost of alternative fuels continually coming down, and with more and more countries, including the United States, committing themselves to trying to craft a future that is less reliant on fossil fuels, then it would be silly for them to invest in fossil fuels. It doesn't matter if they reduce the permitting process or get rid of regulations or basically make it so that these oil companies can be dirtier in this work that they actually do, which is really saying something. But what it comes down to, like with coal, for example, is that alternative sources of energy have become cost competitive, and their cost keeps going down as the cost of fossil fuels keeps going up. So there is no war on fossil fuels. It's just simple economics, which is something Larry Kudlow should understand. Let's keep watching.
We'll launch a permitting bill which will allow permits and pipelines and fracking. And there are shortages in home heating oil that you probably know about. Natural gas is short. We have 2 weeks of diesel supplies, if you can believe that, which is going to be a supply chain problem.
None of which has anything to do with Joe Biden. There are two things right now causing the shortage in diesel fuel, for example. One is the war in Ukraine. The second is the fact that we had a bunch of refineries all at once that were shut down. Well, guess what? They're back up and operating now. That's why you had this little period where oil prices seemed to go up a little bit and then they started going back down. That's because we had a bunch of oil refineries which went offline. Oil prices went up a little bit. They're back online, so oil prices have started coming down again. That has nothing to do with any kind of war on oil. If anything, it points to the fact that the oil companies have underinvested in their facilities, which again points to the fact that they're basically using this money that they earn to give money to the shareholders rather than to use it to make sure that they can deliver more oil. Let's keep watching.
2 weeks of diesel supplies. It sounds like H.R. 1 and S1, a big Republican permitting bill. You know, that will lower inflation, that'll increase growth. But my point is, in everyday life, we need our fossil fuel resources. And to talk about zero or net zero carbon is just nonsense.
You know, not to one-up you here, Larry, but because you came up with all this info, diapers, pacifiers, toys, soaps. People at home know I'm a big hand washer. Soaps, very important. Antiseptics, aspirin, pharmaceuticals. I mean, the list goes on. So when petroleum is more expensive, or we're not producing it here, do those items get more expensive as well?
Well, sure. Look, the costs are passed along. You know, that's one of the reasons why the spike up in energy prices the last 2 years has been killing family budgets. I mean, and they're having to make trade-offs. Look, here's another one for you, Pete. Fertilizers, food, fertilizers.
That's true, actually. As I pointed out earlier, one of the largest users of fossil fuels is the agriculture sector, because a lot of fertilizer is actually made with fossil fuels. But again, that doesn't speak to the fact that we can't reduce the use of fossil fuels in other things, like in the transportation sector. Let's keep watching.
Fertilizers require fossil fuels. So when you look at the CPI, under Biden the last, 18 or 19 months, grocery prices are up, I think 15 or 16% or 17%.
Which is a direct reflection, by the way, of the war in Ukraine. Because, of course, very large suppliers of grain and other agricultural products are, get this, Ukraine and Russia. And as a result of the fact that these are global markets, if the price of these products goes up in one place, then they're going to go up everywhere. Worth remembering, again, that inflation is very high in Europe and Canada. And guess what? Joe Biden has nothing to do with either of those countries. Let's keep watching.
So the point is, all this Green New Deal radical stuff, which would not just allow renewables to grow side by side with fossils, they want to end fossils. You can't do that. Everyday life is too dependent on.
Nobody is saying that fossil fuels are going to be ended anytime soon. What we're saying is that we need to invest in alternative energy sources and in green products. That's all we're saying. This is an example of what the right does so often, which is creating a straw man argument That type of argument is where they say, this is what the other side stands for. This is what the left stands for. Nobody on the left is saying that we need to get rid of fossil fuels anytime soon. In fact, if anything, the big increase we saw in fossil fuel production occurred under President Obama, not under President Trump. And Joe Biden has been working to try to bring down oil prices by finding other sources. There's no question that in the short run, oil is going to continue to play an important part of our economy. The goal is in the long run to start shifting away from it, which is something that certainly can be done. That's what the people on the left are saying. And this straw man argument that there's some war on fossil fuels or that they're trying to shift us over to a fossil fuel-free future right now, that is all BS. And I'm calling them on it. Let's keep watching.
On fossils, it would take 100 years or it would take 200 years.
Well, it wouldn't take 100 years or 200 years. It'll happen a lot faster than that. And again, we can certainly reduce our dependence on oil pretty dramatically. Let's keep watching.
I mean, I'm not exaggerating. So it just doesn't make any sense. It's damaged the economy. It's jacked up the inflation rate. As I say, it's damaged family budgets enormously. It's caused wages, right? People are working hard, doing the best they can. They're increasing their wages, but the inflation is faster than the wages.
Yeah.
Now, that's not all about fossils, but it's a lot about fossils. So the Bidens need to back off. It's a big issue. In a week's time for the election. It's a very big issue. And I think you're going to see the Republicans right out of the chute try to take the handcuffs off of fossil fuels to make this a better country, to cut inflation and increase growth.
It's good to hear. I mean, you go to war with the core of our economy and you reap what you sow. And unfortunately, average people are dealing with it. Larry Kudlow, as always, thanks for breaking it down for us.
And the amazing thing is, let's just assume that they were to do that. Guess what would happen? Nothing. Because again, the economic incentives aren't there. That's the reason that oil companies aren't producing more oil. Has nothing to do with any kind of war on oil. You see, I just wish that when we were arguing with people on the right, we could at least argue about the actual facts, about the actual argument, rather than these continual straw man arguments that keep being raised where they say, oh, this is what the left stands for, when we don't stand for that. A classic example of that would be where when Nancy Pelosi's husband was attacked in their home by a QAnon racist adherent who clearly was after the speaker herself. What's the response of the right? Oh, he's a person of the left because apparently at one point he belonged to a nudist group. Well, I've got to tell you, I guess I'm a member of the left. I'm certainly a liberal and have been for my entire life. And I've never felt the need to go to a nudist colony. I've never known anybody who felt the need to go to a nudist colony. And so I don't know how somehow being a nudist is equated with being part of the left. That's a straw man argument. And that's exactly what we're seeing here by Larry Kudlow when he's talking about the so-called war on oil. So I wish we could at least talk about the real issues as opposed to some made-up issues. But unfortunately, when we talk about the real issues, that's when Democrats start looking pretty good. So I guess we're not going to be seeing a whole lot of that on Fox News. Well, if you want to check out what's actually in the climate bill that the Democrats favor, why don't you check out this video over here that I did quite a while ago. Maybe then when people tell you that Democrats are trying to get rid of oil anytime soon, you'll be able to answer them with what's actually in the legislation that we support. I'll see you then. In the meantime, let's hope for continued progress. Thank you.